back to Nubeva's channel. We're sitting here once again with Randy, who on the previous video, we got to know about his past, his travels, his chess skills, basically how he wind up to where he was today. And while he did give a good origin story for Nubeva, including the fact that people like me, like the first thing I did was think of it as Nubeva as well. So aside from that, he gave a really good origin story, but today we wanted to dive deeper into it. So Randy, how are you doing? Are you ready to dive in?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good. I'm glad to have you. So let's start this off really simply. Let's say as an elevator pitch, I walk in an elevator with you. I'm real curious about what you do in your business. Give it to me in 20 floors.
In 20 floors, normally it's 5 floors. Okay, I'll do it in 20 floors. So if you look at the background I gave last time around in the video that I provided, this all started somewhere around 2013 when Eric Snowden actually released all the data about what NSA and CIA and some of what US government was doing. So they were actually able to, it turns out the US government had been able to hack into some of the largest tech companies' data centers, view Google's data, Yahoo's data, et cetera, et cetera. And so that made a lot of the tech companies furious about that.
Yeah.
Okay? And so what they started doing right after 2013, that's well before we started Beva, what they started doing is they wanted to make sure everything is encrypted and everything's properly encrypted. And when I say properly encrypted, that means nobody in between the communication can actually see the data. Okay, and you're gonna ask, well, if it's encrypted, why would I ever want anybody in between to see the data?
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you're a bank or a healthcare company, name any bank you've ever heard of, top 50 in the world, every single one today has over 200 cybersecurity products, scanning everything that you do with them. Whether you're online with them, you're talking on the phone, you're on an ATM, 200 different cybersecurity products will scan the encrypted data to look at what's going on. Now you look at what Google did. Google decided, hey, everything needs to be encrypted and nobody can see this anymore. So that means all those cybersecurity products that were working for the last 5, 10 years stop working. And this is where we come in. We make sure that even if you have the top TLS encrypted channel between your source and destination, client and server, however you actually look at it, ATM, customer to a bank, et cetera, we make sure that we can still get the session keys in a way that satisfies the standards body, satisfies the tech companies, the banks, and everybody else. We can still see into the data with the permission from the bank or the end user and scan it without being in between them. That's what we do. It's absolutely game changing because there's literally nobody else that actually claims to be able to do this. And as you can imagine, as everybody started using more and more encryption, a lot of the tools that used to catch hackers or a lot of the tools that looked at whether things are performant stop functioning, and we make that function again. And that's what we do.
Wonderful. It's interesting that encryption has evolved so much that it got to the point where nobody could access it. And then it's also really interesting that you guys had the vision like, hey, this is something that we need right now, and that you guys don't have any real competitors in this space then.
Yeah.
Now, is there anything somewhat similar to this? Is there anything that kind of patches it?
Yeah, so let me describe how this used to work before the encryption became, let's just call it next level, right? So the standards body is TLS 1.3. When perfect, it's called perfect for secrecy. So what that means is, even if you had the security credentials to see into an encrypted channel, if you were not there when the encryption actually happened, you still can't decrypt it. So in other words, let's say I'm some security agency for some government, okay? So today I see all the encrypted data and I capture it and I store it. And then maybe 5, 10 years down the road, I find a way to get the security credentials to see into that encrypted channel. Well, with PFS, you can't do that. You literally have to have the security credentials at the time the data was encrypted. Okay, and so coming back to how did the world work before PFS and TLS 1.3 was around? So the way that it used to work is, if you have a client, a TLS client, talking to a server, well, you would put something in between. It's called man in the middle. Okay, and so a lot of there's different names to that. There's proxies. Every single large cybersecurity company in the world that you can think of, the Cisco's, the Palo Altos, the Zscalers, RSAs, you name it. Anybody has a man in the middle proxy that would be able to scan inside the channel, inside the connection. Okay, and so that works just fine when you're not using PFS, when you're not using certain types of encryption. That essentially disables that ability. Okay, and that's essentially where we come in. So before we were available, and before TLS 1.3 was around, there's a lot of these products that would terminate in between the connection, scan the data, and then continue that connection down the road. And so today, more and more applications and products disallow that. So at the beginning, it used to be, for example, the Google products, the G Suite products, Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheet. They would say, nope, not going to allow that. You're not going to have somebody man in the middle spoof what's going on. I'm going to pin the certificates. I'm not going to allow you to be able to see anything.
Yeah.
As that started going and going and going, other people started for various different reasons, right? Not just the folks that are offering enterprise products like Google G Suite, Office 365 started doing that, even Instagram, right? So people that are offering social media and other applications, they simply, for various reasons, don't want somebody else to be able to scan the data. Okay? And so you can use your imagination as to why they would be doing that. But the trend just took off. It's now exponential. The amount of applications and protocols and usages where they're just not going to allow somebody, a man-in-the-middle device, they're going to pin the certificates so that it's end-to-end encrypted in the way they expected it to be encrypted. It's just skyrocketing. I wouldn't be able to, for the next half an hour, I wouldn't be able to list out all the different applications and tools that now today enforce that.
So this new tech kind of had some mass adoption. And what was it? Was there a proliferation of problems that happened once everyone started adopting this? What was it? It sounds like there was some major downsides that you guys were like, hey, this is not all, sunshine.
Well, yes, it's very interesting because if you look at how Google, between 2013 and now, Google came out with a number of different products. Between that time frame, obviously, Google Chrome started getting popular. You actually go back somewhere around 2016 or so. Google Chrome came out one day, and all of a sudden, a whole bunch of these websites stopped working. That's the day when they said, okay, no more of this man in the middle. And then when they enforced that, the all hell broke loose. People were I was using Chrome, and I go, wait a minute, I can't go to my bank anymore. What's going on? And so they actually then delay that. They actually then said, okay, we told you this was coming. You didn't think this was coming, so we'll give you another 6 months to a year or two before this is coming. Okay, and so there's just a lot of pain where an industry like cybersecurity doesn't like to shift overnight. Now we talk about technology, about pivoting and everything, but the reality is if you're in cybersecurity and things are working just fine and things are secure, you just don't have a lot of incentive to change. And so when this change came along, it really took, it's taking almost a decade before all the different cybersecurity products. It isn't just cybersecurity. There's also, if you're in performance and analytics for cellular, for nowadays for 5G, if you want to know, when I'm using my phone, my iPhone 12, and all of a sudden I'm in 5G zone and I switch to 4G, why does my call drop? What happens? Well, there's a massive amount of infrastructure and back office tools that detect what's going on. And that required them to be able to see into the decrypted channel or unencrypted channel, however you want to describe that. Well, nowadays with everything becoming TLS 1.3, they can't. And so all the tools that used to diagnose when you went from 3G to 4G, the tools that told you, hey, this is the problem, that's the problem, your tower's too far, tower's too close, too much power, too little power. All those things, all those tools that used to be around that function for that industry literally does not work when you now switch from 4G to 5G, because everything in 5G must be TLS 1.3 encrypted. And so even though we're talking about encryption, we're talking about cybersecurity, the reality is this applies to a lot of other things that come to performance analytics and whether it's just technology works or not.
All right. So it's kind of like we have this fancy new iron curtain, but it turns out we sometimes need to see behind the curtain too.
Yes, everybody does.
and by implementing it, and then we have no way to see behind it. So I imagine you're actually a supporter of the new encryption thing. It's just you saw this hole there. You saw what needed, this market penetration that you guys could accomplish. All right. So then tell me, who have you guys been targeting? Who have you been talking to? If you can give names or just talk about industries in general.
So our target customer today, as of right now, are all OEM customers that are either in cybersecurity or in tools that supply, for example, performance analytics or 5G. Think of the largest cybersecurity companies doing well over $1 billion in revenue, market cap in the 10s, 20s to 100 billion. Those are the folks that they need an alternative. The market where they had the ability to look into the data and provide value for their customers, which is the largest banks and healthcares and governments around the world. Well, their value diminishes. The less they can see, the less value they provide. Now, sure, you're going to see a whole slew of other products that use artificial intelligence to try to guesswork, based on behavior analytics. Is this connection coming in during the day, during the night, at 3 a.m. in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. They're able to detect certain things, but this is kind of common sense. If you can't see into the data, you really can't catch everything. If you want to catch everything, you got to see into the data. And so I kind of talked about this last time around. And the greatest example is recently, last year, when the SolarWinds attack actually happened. Mm-hmm. The attack actually came in the software provided by the infrastructure itself. It's not like they installed some software and somebody came in and hacked that. Yeah. The hackers actually hacked the original source of how the build of the system actually came to do. And so everybody just trusted this product to do what it does with encrypted channels. Most, if not all, cybersecurity products didn't scan inside that connection because they just assumed, well, this is a known, good player, right? Well, what happens when that gets hacked? Well, we know what happens. Everybody got hacked. Right? I don't think there's any exception of anybody that claims that says, I use SolarWinds, I was not hacked. I haven't seen that at all. So based on implications, you can just derive that and say, anybody who was using SolarWinds, however, wherever they were using it, they got hacked. And so that illustrates the importance of seeing into the connection. If you can't see into it, you can't catch.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's kind of like you can catch bank robbers only after the fact. You wouldn't be able to catch them ahead of time, right?
It's very much more proactive, and being reactive never ends as well.
Exactly. Reactive is still important.
You still got to react.
It's better than nothing. It's certainly better than nothing. I don't want to dismiss that entire industry. That's very important.
Well, yeah. Now I'm curious. I want to dive deeper into so let's say you sign a contract with somebody, and again, you don't got the details, but how is your service deployed? Is this like a continuous thing? Is this something that you run checks every so often? Just tell me about how the day-to-day goes with the service itself.
Sure. So what happens most of the time is you got this OEM customer of ours, our OEM customer. Mm-hmm. They had some sort of a man in the middle way of looking into data in the past. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, more of their customer target applications stop working. They can't look into it. So what that happens is if Google G Suite comes along, Instagram comes along, they bypass it. They just say, well, I can't look into it, so let it through, kind of a thing. And so that obviously implies if there's an attack over it, something bad could happen. Now they have other ways to detect attacks in other different ways, but definitely at the time of the attack, if they want to be able to look into that, they need something like our product. Okay, so this is where we come in. We provide software to OEM vendors. Okay, they will take our software, integrate it into their software, and essentially run either in conjunction with the man in the middle, or in certain cases replace it. It really depends on how they prefer to do that. And we really don't care. Okay? And after they run that, what we provide as an ongoing service is we give them signatures of applications and protocols where we can see in the keys. So today we have literally over 1,000 of these applications, libraries, and protocols that we will look into it and say, if it's this application, if it's Microsoft Office 365 or Excel, and it's making this connection to either Microsoft's cloud or you name it, we can decrypt that and we can give you the keys.
Okay.
And so that's essentially how we make money. We license the software initially, and we're typically talking about in the 7-figure, 6 to 7-figure, depending on the source code availability and access to that. And then on an ongoing basis, they pay maintenance and they pay on the signature itself.
All right. So, you mentioned one interesting thing when you talked about bad players slipping through in this encrypted data. When I was researching into the pipeline and such, I'd found out that it's often a significant amount of time from the moment they first make access to the time that they actually make the attack. Right. So is that the kind of place where it's like you would find out significantly quicker before the attack, preferably, hey, there's some actual issue here?
With what we provide, you certainly can do that much faster. Okay. And a lot of this really depends on the type of attack, and that depends on the tools that our OEM customers supply. Some of the OEM customers will go in and say, well, they'll detect zero-day attacks. So in other words, as soon as the perpetrator goes in, they'll detect it. Now, there's also a claim that says you're never going to be able to detect every single perpetrator, but you need to be able to detect as soon as they do some damage. And so, as you can imagine, any hacker that goes into a system at some time or another, they need to connect back, phone home, talk to somebody that can essentially does a remote connection or control and control what it's actually doing. And that's where we come in. That connection, we decrypt and we let everybody see, hey, look what's going on. The social security number is flying through this bank statement is flying, you name it, right? The financial data that's going through this, going to another continent or another country, shouldn't be going there. Well, if you didn't see into that encrypted connection, you wouldn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
Interesting. It's kind of like putting this under the microscope, so to speak, where you can, it's like,
Exactly.
again, it's like, it's very opaque, but then you can actually see what's going on and what people are doing.
Yep.
So then another thing I want to dive into, just talk about just a little bit here, is what are your guys' plans from here? Is there going to be continuous software updates? Is this something where it's like other security type tools where it's a cat and mouse game, consistently changing things and improving them as you learn more?
Keep in mind, there isn't really a cat and mouse game for us, right? We decrypt what the applications and protocols do. Now, those applications and protocols are not going to try to prevent us from decrypting it, right? Ultimately, you need admin access. You need some rights to install what we do. So in other words, Microsoft Office or Google G Suite isn't going to go around and say, "Whoa, Nubeva decrypted what Office does. Let's change how Office works." That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so we're not enemies, right? So we help people do what their job better. Now, at the same time, as you can imagine, there's millions of applications nowadays. We support well over 1,000 of these libraries and applications, and that covers probably, I'd say, 97 to 98% of what people commonly use. But there's still a lot of them coming. And so that's the beauty of this kind of business that we're in, that you can justify saying, you're always going to need us. In other words, there's not going to be a day that says, okay, I'm done. This is the last app I'm ever going to need to decrypt. I'm kind of done from that. So that's number one. And number two, going from a market standpoint, today we're going after OEM customers, which is the people that use us for cybersecurity or performance analytics or connections like 5G. What we're beginning to see is very large end users also starting to call us. In other words, there's large end users that buy, think of Fortune 50 or Fortune 10 companies. Okay. They buy cybersecurity products to look at things, but the reality is they have themselves figuring out cybersecurity issues. Right? We hear about large tech companies spending over $1 billion in cybersecurity all the time. So what does that mean? They buy cybersecurity products and they build it themselves. They literally go out and build that. And so when they're building those cybersecurity tools that address their own applications, we come in. We allow them to say, hey, you can decrypt it too, and you can see into it. So that's probably going to be the next stage of our evolution. Right now, we're doing OEM, and in the let's say near future, we're going to go to very large end users.
Interesting. Sounds like you guys have, again, a very strong basis right now, and you got a good plan for growth. Randy, thank you so much for shining light on this. It's a really interesting topic, and it's a really complicated one. So thank you for breaking it down for me and for everyone watching. Is there anything else you want to add about the company before we go?
No, that's it. And thank you again for having me.
Of course. Well, Randy, again, thank you for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If anyone has any questions about anything for Randy, I'm sure he'd be very happy to answer them for you. And stay tuned, because we'll get some more exciting content to you as soon as we can. Randy, have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.